We're
Yes,
talking to
ma'am.
Michael Poage here, and he's from over on the other side of the middle of the country in the Midwestern area. And we have a couple of books here, Essential Workers and
Yes, we do.
Heart. Oh my goodness, this is a big old book.
They almost
Big.
1,000 pages there.
Wow.
You can use it for a doorstop too if you
You
want.
could use it for a doorstop, but that would be a shame because then you wouldn't be reading the poems that are in the
That's
book.
true. Yes. Yeah.
And I noticed that this book is actually has a collection in it of some of the other books that I've seen
Yeah.
of yours.
Yeah. It's
Oh.
it's actually um, a collection of about of my 15 15 previous books. Um, all
1975 to 2024.
yes, right. Yeah. So my first book was published in 1975, and and it, it's it's out of print now. I have maybe two copies here in my study, um, but it's difficult to get. And uh,
Was that Born?
yes, right, yeah,
Born? So that's the
um,
first book featured in the book. Huh? Yeah.
yes, right. So it just goes um, book by book by book, and uh,
The Gospel of Mary.
uh-huh, yes, um, that's hard to find as well, but it is it is around in different. I
You had to do some digging to get to it,
You have
huh?
to do some digging. Yes, it might be in England. uh, I've found a couple of my books overseas, um, and uh, the person that printed that book, a guy named Peter Koch, um, it was also his first book to print. And
Really?
yes, we were both in Missoula, Montana, and I was uh, teaching in a little two-room school in up, about 30 miles up the Blackfoot River from Missoula. And uh, a mutual friend of ours got us together and actually told Peter to take a look at Poage's work, and he did, and he liked it, and then uh, he said, "You want to do a book?" And who would say no to that? and, and he and his wife Shelley at the time, um, they did a it's done on a hand press, and they both believed in the book as art, um, you know, on the outside as well as interior.
Hmm.
And so Peter, put in the little lead font, piece by piece, and then would print a page, and or actually about 300 pages. But it's an amazing book. It's a beautiful hand beautiful example of a hand print book. Um, and then he went on to be very well known in um, the book the elite book business, like ancient and old manuscripts, and resurrecting those. And he had um, he's had a couple of retrospectives um, shows on his work in the New York Public Library and at the San Francisco Public Library. But I haven't done a reading at either one of those places. So, uh, but you know, we sewed it together
Wow.
too. Yeah, and
Well, it's quite a labor to put this big old book together.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It
What was
was.
that like for you to go through all of the different poems to make, that decision?
Oh, that was. It took 2 years um, for my editor here in Kansas. Actually, he's in Missouri, but um, for us to put together the book, um, uh, Heart, because um, different things would happen, like COVID,
Yeah.
because you know he Jason Reberg actually is his name. Um, he 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 said, why don't we put? He said, I think it's time to put together a collected poems, and I I said, uh, okay, as long as it's collected and um, uh, not complete, because I'm not done yet. And so we did a collected poems, and but it was, you know, editing it and going through it like that just took a long time too. And I would, um, uh, he was really, he was patient, and I was patient, and but going through the poems, it, a lot of them I just didn't remember, and but I read through editing every poem in the book, like 900 and some odd pages, um, probably 5 times. Uh, putting heart together,
Yeah.
and the cover is a photograph that I took of a stone in a cobblestone street in the city of Mostar in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Um, I just took a couple of photos um, of the street and this one in particular that you just put up on the screen, uh, it's 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 really in the shape of the human heart. I mean, the human heart's
Mhm.
not a perfect Valentine's heart shape, and it's also roughly the shape of Bosnia as the
Oh,
country.
wow.
So I just I said, Jason, what do you think of this as a cover? And and we used the title Heart, collected poems, etc. And and he said, yeah, that's a good idea. And
Mhm.
so that's that's how we got that's how we got the cover. And it was really the whole thing was really fun because I was editing my collected poems, and I was also working on essential workers, and also editing work that was coming into our press.
Mhm.
And so it was a busy time. Um,
Yeah.
and but um, it, as I read the poems in heart, and we were putting a pretty remark. I mean, for me, a pretty remarkable book. I mean, I have been
Mhm.
writing since 1967, actually.
Right.
So I better have something to show for it. Um,
Yes.
uh, and so I'm really glad Jay mentioned, you know, let's do this book. But um, not only did COVID happen, but Jason, my editor, got really, really sick, and he
Oh.
was out for about 8 or 9 months. And I thought he was going to die,
Mm.
really. But he came through. He did what he needed to do to get healthy, and resumed then work on Heart. Um, I'm just really grateful that uh, to have a collected poems, and there aren't a lot of people in at least in the Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska that have a collected poems, uh, and Jason said he put it he put it like this. He said, um, "You're just you write more than anybody else around here. So you write fast, and not only fast, but um, uh, they you know you have enough for books, and they're they're also different than most people out here are writing, um, and which I took as a compliment.
And you
And
should.
well, I hope so. And I and I just turned 80 actually last week.
Happy
Um,
birthday.
thank you. We went down to Austin, Texas. We have a couple of kids and a couple of grandkids down there, and we spent about 7 days there, 6 days there, and that was really that was fun.
Yeah.
And so so we put together the poems, and as I said, I hadn't really remembered a lot of them because um, once I write a poem,
Mhm.
um, I set it over. I'll print it up, and I'll also save it in a file, and then I'm on to something else. I really seldom will remember a poem that,
Mhm.
and I've never memorized any of my poems. Um, but when I dig into, I open to a certain poem, to a certain page, um, I think, yeah, I did write that. you know, and and I do have, there are some favorites, but um, I uh, I like to I like to hand this book um, to my kids. Uh,
Mm.
you know, this is what I've
Yeah.
been doing for, you know, a while.
A
And
wonderful gift for your children to have.
that's, yeah. And my editor gave me a wonderful gift in saying, let's do a collected poems.
Uh-huh.
So, that was a gift to me as well. And,
Yeah, big gift.
and then not, long after that, I gave Jason this manuscript. I said, are you up to doing another one? And then he said, compared to um, Heart, we can do this, quickly. And I designed the cover on this one as well.
I'm
Um,
just going to ask you about that. That cover is amazing.
well, that's what I think. And we were at the Kansas Book Festival this past weekend
Hmm.
up in Topeka at Washburn University, and um, we managed to sell a pretty good, a pretty fair amount of books. Actually, we at least paid for our display table. Um,
Well, that's good.
yes, and this cover, um, and this is published again. This isn't my company publishing this. This is Jason's company,
Right.
um, and it but it drew a
Barton.
lot. It drew a lot of attention, you know, and uh, I tried to get people to look at it because I really love the cover, and uh, it's my 17th book.
So you
Um,
designed the cover. What is that process of designing for you? How does that work?
I in this case I I just I think I looked up essential workers on on Google, or not, it wouldn't be Google, uh, maybe on Canva,
Mhm.
and because I was just curious what essential workers would bring up visually um, on Canva, and this just happened to be um, on one of the offerings by Canva, and
Well,
then I
that's
looked at a few other
wonderful.
places,
Mhm.
and I don't remember what they
Right.
were, um, and um, and it takes me a while to
Yeah.
even though I liked it at first, it takes me a while to live with the cover, and
Hmm.
um, and then talking to Jason, um, he came up with a cover or two as well. Um, we both decided we liked the,
Yeah.
the current one better, so we went with that one. Um,
And
and I think it works.
essential workers, the title, how did you come up with that specific idea? What inspired that for you?
I, I think, as often happens, I saw the phrase essential workers in a probably in some sort of a political um, article online, and and um, or I heard, maybe I was on a podcast and I heard the phrase essential workers, and I was sitting here at my desk and I just wrote it down because um, it intrigued me, you know, that idea of essential workers. And um, so it stuck. And yeah, and it was a while um, before I used it because I just write it down quickly in my notebook. And you know, I'll come back to it. Maybe 10 pages later, I'll come back to it. And and sometimes it's years. Be you know, I'll be flipping through notebooks and see a phrase that I'd written down, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 or 10
Yeah,
years before. Yeah, you know what
I think
that's like.
we're all guilty of that. Yes, I have sticky notes everywhere and tax
Yes,
off.
right. Yeah, right. And
Mhm.
I'm glad you mentioned e-notes. I actually wrote a poem. It wasn't meant to be a poem. It was meant to be, I'm not sure what it was meant to be. Um, uh, in my notebook section on my phone, that app. Um, and it was there for uh, years, literally years before I looked at it and tweaked it a little bit and had a poem that I thought was good. And I don't remember the title right now. um, but that's the way essential workers came about. It was just sitting there in my notebooks, and not in this case, not for years, but for probably a couple of 3 months anyway. And then um, I wrote a poem, Essential Workers, and then um, often I'll use a title for a poem
Mhm.
as the title for the book.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people do that.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just, I don't know if this happens with you, but I'll go through uh, poems that I've written, um, and then I'll put them together as a manuscript. I'll have 50 or 60 or 70 poems as a manuscript, and um, I won't have a title yet, and I'll start going through the poems, um, and there's there's some mysterious voice that says that's the one, or
Hmm.
consider that title as a title for your book or the manuscript. Um, and it happens a lot. And Born, the first book back in 1975, happened that way. Uh, the last poem in Born is called Born. And it's also, I mean, it was my first book. So it was kind of the idea of giving birth to this volume of work. Um, and it came, let's see, I graduated with my MFA in 1973, and stayed in Montana and started teaching and and kept writing. Um, and that's 2 years later. Peter and I put the book together called Born. But that often happens, and or I steal a newspaper headline. I mean, there's, there are all kinds of interesting um, uh, poetry titles that just hit
Yeah,
sound right.
exactly.
They just they
It clicks.
grab your ear. Pardon me. Go ahead. I'm
It clicks with you. It just clicks.
exactly, yes, yeah, and um, there's been some, several things, and my wife and I travel a fair bit, and I usually get a newspaper and take it on the plane because our city doesn't have a newspaper hard copy anymore. It's all
Yeah,
digital.
that's sad, isn't
And
it?
it is very sad. It really takes something out of the community.
It really
Uh,
does.
yeah. And I mean, I subscribe to the digital version, but it's not the same thing. There's advertisements that come on when I'm in the middle of an article, and just so when I get to a city or get to an airport of any size, there's usually at least one or two newspapers there. I look for the New York Times um, or even the local newspaper, like, well, the Chicago Tribune or something. We fly through Chicago a lot,
Mhm.
um, and I read and 9 times out of 10, there's a wonderful title in the headlines. And I'll quickly jot it down, usually on the airport nap or the airline napkin. they give you for, with your pretzels, and and that's kind of fun actually to
Yeah,
read the news, but also look for something literary.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is
and
tricky sometimes in the news.
it is. That's true. Yeah, it's usually, well, I won't go into,
Yeah. I
that,
have a
but yeah.
habit of when we're travel of picking up. I like small town newspapers, and
Yes,
if we
me too.
happen to be traveling
Yes.
through small towns, I'll pick up a paper. And, my daughter reminds me, "Don't you going to get a paper, Mom?" "Oh yeah, gotta get a paper." And
Great.
I may not have lived around that area forever, but I still like to pick up the paper. And you might find the most fascinating stories that the small town papers will have that you won't find in a big city paper. You know,
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
it's the sweetness about it. It's a certain small town charm that you pick up, and
Yeah.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
My and they are disappearing. But in when I first moved to Kansas and had my first church there, there was I moved from San Francisco to Council Grove, a town of 2,500 people, and um, it was a little bit of an adjustment,
Yes.
but they had and still have a a paper for the town. Um, and it it's still run by some of the original people, people's relatives, um, and the town itself. The last time I was there seemed really sad. I mean, there were more buildings that were um, shut down than when I was there. When I was there, it was a really thriving community. It was, and but that passed the newspaper office, walking on the sidewalk, and got a newspaper, and it hadn't you you could go to back to 1985 and compare 85 to 2025, and the the style, and I mean the format hadn't changed. and it's and it, there's something great about that.
Yeah.
There's something I really love about that. And you've got, like you said, some really sweet stories, and um, people just really committed to that
Yes.
newspaper. Um,
Mhm.
and sometimes I got a line from a poem or a title from a poem, for a poem from that newspaper, which happens to be called The Republican. But I didn't, let that bother me. Um, and uh, so that's how, that's part of the process. And
Mhm.
you know, other times um, I'm sure this is true with you as well. You hear conversations, parts of conversations,
Oh
or
my goodness, yes.
right? You think you hear parts of conversations, and and if you're fortunate to have a pen and paper handy, you can
Hmm.
jot that down.
Yes.
I try to carry at least a scrap of paper in my
Hmm.
pocket, and I'm always carrying a pen around. And Joseph Brodsky, maybe I mentioned this to you before, but the late Joseph Brodsky, I was reading an article about him, and or an interview, and the interviewer asked him, "What do you miss most about not being in Russia and now being a professor here in the United States and working primarily in English?" and teaching in English, writing in English. And he said, Joseph Brodsky replied with, he said, I miss the language. I miss the words. I miss the conversations on the streetcar uh, in Russian. And I can't imagine making that transition. Um, I know some Bosnian, I know some Spanish, but I can't imagine writing a really honest poem in another language. I can translate. I've translated um, a French poet whose name now I don't even, Andre Dubuchel.
Mhm.
Um, Andre Dubuchel, yes.
Mhm.
Um, Back in the early 70s. And I'd never taken French before. And I translated one of his books, it was very short. The poems were sparse. Um, but I wrote to him. He was teaching at that time. No, he was in Paris at that time. And I wrote to him and I sent him a sample of the poems that I translated from French to English using just a French dictionary um, and a thesaurus. And um, he wrote back and he said, basically, he said, these are good enough. I mean, they're very good, which I was amazed to hear. He said, these are very fine translations, and I give you permission to publish them,
Nice.
which I've never done. Um, it's interesting, and
Yeah.
they're in a box or somewhere in our garage,
Mhm.
uh, if they haven't been eaten by the mice. Um, but it was fun to translate, uh, and I might dig in there and try it again, but um, I'd rather do some translating with Bosnian poets uh, and there's this, Eastern Europe has been a major influence on me. So in my writing and
Yeah.
uh, Bosnia, the Czech Republic, Poland, um, some amazing writers, coming out of those countries and people's experiences in those countries. Um, and also Latin and South America. Um,
Mhm.
People, writers who have a completely different, yet the same
Mhm.
um, love for the language.
Yeah.
Um, it's really I find it fascinating and um, and I love to do it.
Yeah.
It's also a matter of just reading a lot. I
Mhm.
like to read people I don't know and
Right.
see what I just discovered Jack Spicer, who I knew of before, but he was a West Coast writer, and I think you'll find this story interesting. Uh, I saw a poem on the Poetry Magazine website. It's poetry.org, I think, or Poetry Foundation.
Poets.org.
Yeah, right. And there was a poem in there, and it was a letter to somebody. Um, and I read that, and I thought I'm gonna write a letter to Jack Spicer. I read a little bit about him. He died, gosh, he was 40 when he died, um, and he lived in the North Beach area of San Francisco, um, and did a lot of writing in his lifetime, and some lectures on writing. And but he was just a really didn't treat his body very well, and he died in a hotel room. No, he died in a pauper's section of a San Francisco hospital, which is, I mean, it's really sad, you know. So I really wanted to write something with some kind of connection to Jack Spicer, and um, and so I pictured myself in a classroom, and I, I started writing the poem and asking students to respond to the letter that he wrote. I imagined myself putting the letter up as a PowerPoint, um, and on the screen, and asking students to respond to um, different words or implications of relationships, or and so the poem kind of does this question and answer back and forth. Um, but then in the last, it's not broken up into stanzas, but in the last 5 or 6 lines, um, it turned into, you know how a poem or a novel can force you to turn into a different direction.
Yes.
And that's what happened here. And it turned
Um,
out to be a love poem to my wife in
oh,
in
wow.
the in the last 5 or 6 lines. Um, and I thought, God, where where did this come from? You
Mhm.
know, and that's one of the wonderful things about writing and art in itself, across the board, is the discoveries that are made, that you can make, and linguistically or emotionally. Um, and that was so much fun, and it was so surprising. I haven't even shown it to my wife yet.
Oh,
This has been like 2 months ago.
oh,
Um, I,
you better
I
do
just put
that.
it in. What's that?
I say you better do that.
I better do that before it's published. Yes. um, and it's in the next manuscript, and I was really happy with that. So, you know, as you know, writing can come from all kinds of
Yeah.
corners of the universe, you know. And so a lot, we hear a lot about the muse. And for me, the muse is a really mixed up personality. I mean, or uh, has different ways of dealing with me. And because I get asked about, what is your muse? And and it's a complicated or a complex answer to a relatively simple question. And but but that's what the muse is. To me, it's the world. And no matter where you are, and no matter who you're talking to or listening to, um, it's fascinating just to hear and to watch what happens as you're writing on the page. Um, changes that take about, that you didn't plan on, and you're not sure they're right for the poem. And like with this one, the letter to Jack Spicer, I did put it away for a while. And I mean, a short while, 2 or 3 days. And I pulled it
Yeah.
back out, and I thought, yeah, this is okay. I'm going to put it into the manuscript. Um,
I'd
so
like you to read for us Essential Workers. Would you do that?
sure, the poem.
Uh-huh. The poem
Uh,
Essential Workers. No, the whole
yeah,
book. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, right. We'd be here a while. Uh,
Oh, that would be
and
lovely.
it's the first book, page one. Um, Thank you for asking. Essential workers. No one wants to be around anymore. I just don't have any vivid memories. Recognizing a halt or a sublime performance, some idea like the invasion of the beauty spring in the languaging of the mouth and the languishing when we can. Circe may be around the corner, around the bed. She want to she might want to be with you with your own visiting memories. Well, welcome, traveler. My promise, if you sleep with me, is clean, soft sheets and sublimity. And the word and languaging is I guess a made up word. I it was
I love made up words. I love it.
yes. Yeah, and it to me it makes um well it helps out with languishing in the line below. And I like the connection between languaging and languishing.
Definitely.
Um, and and I have a hunch that I wrote languaging like it like it is.
Yeah.
I didn't question because I too invent words. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, um, and
Drives some people crazy when I do that, but I don't care.
really,
I,
oh
I do
gosh,
it all the time.
yeah. Where'd you
Don't
get this
worry.
word?
Claiming it. I'm sorry. I'm claiming this word.
Absolutely. You know, every once in a while, there's an article or a mention of an article on a poet, usually a poet, sometimes a prose writer who does make up poems. I mean, like T.S. Eliot or Ezra Pound. I mean, um, but it's not in the world of poetry. It's not that unusual.
Yeah.
In the world we live in, especially if we're talking to like a first grade teacher, um, they they say, don't show my student that word. and But I like the word, and there's probably more made up words in the book. I'm not sure.
Well,
Um,
that's okay. You know,
yeah,
your poem In the Silence is probably my favorite. That's on
and
page 6. I wonder if you wouldn't mind if I read that one.
of course not. I'd love for
I
you
read
to read
it earlier to David Martin, and we both agreed it should be in fine lines. So, hint, hint.
it.
In
Ah,
the silence. In the silence of the moment, after the last breath, the old man holds her hand, studies her face. In the silence, after a long while, her skin begins to cool. A temperature not even their favorite old blanket can warm back to normal. The old man feels like a prisoner chained to the wrong side in the silence of the moment after. It's a decadent world making her skin forever cold, stealing her from him, closing the door forever cold. The old man rolls over in the bed and faces the wall.
yeah.
Wow, that got my heart twisted. I love it.
Thank you. You read it really well.
Thank you.
Um, and the I've been for the last year I've been studying just on my own um, the Welsh poet R.S. Thomas, not Dylan Thomas, but R.S. Thomas, who was more or less a um, contemporary of um, Dylan Thomas, but Dylan Thomas died when he was 39. R.S. Thomas died when he was 87. So he kept writing, and he was sharp right up until the end. Um, and he was also a clergy person he was a minister in the church Church of Wales and for a long time. And both of us being pastors have experienced times like this when we are at the bedside of someone who is dying. And in Wales, um, the person who is dying turns over and does face the wall. And in this case, I want, I didn't want the dying person to face the wall. I wanted the man who was losing everything to face the wall. Um, it might have been in the same bed. I don't know, but um, that's where that illusion comes from, or that material comes from. Was R.S. Thomas relating times when he's been at the bedside um, and the person just it's a um, it's an ancient custom, I guess, where the person just turns to the literally to face the wall. And I was like that captured my imagination as well,
Yeah.
uh, because
Wow.
it doesn't happen in this country, and um, but some of the emotion of that poem, of course, happens in most any death like that. Um, and most of the experiences I've had um, like that, I mean, most all of them are elderly folks. They might even be younger than me, but um, uh, it's such a privilege and an honor to be um, with them as they make that transition. And
Right.
I might be I'll be talking to them until the end. I might brush the hair out of their eyes if there's any
Hmm.
hair. Um, and you do feel, holding their hand, you do feel the cold beginning to make itself known.
Yeah.
Um, and that's one of the parts of being clergy that I can't, I don't know if that made me feel like I was doing something
Hmm.
helpful to somebody.
Right.
Um, and it was also just an honor. Like I said,
Hmm.
um, it was just something really, really special. It's like a gift, handing the books over. It's
Hmm.
like it was a gift.
Yes.
It, and
Very
it,
much so.
yeah, and it's not true for everybody.
Right.
Wearing the cloth. um, there's some people just try to avoid it as much as possible. But I was always kind of attracted to that,
Mhm.
and I had a great uncle, I'm sorry, who was a doctor in rural Kansas, and he used to talk about that um, being um, with a dying person um, and not leaving. I mean, staying with them, um,
Yeah.
and I really respected him for that.
Hmm.
Um, but anyway, that's kind of the some of the background of that
Yeah.
poem. And thanks again for reading it.
Well,
And
thank you for
like,
allowing me to.
yeah, and obviously
So,
you like that. So anyway, yes.
um, you're going to be traveling again. I understood you said earlier that you're going to travel to Bosnia again
Yes, yes,
in
we are.
October.
We'll spend 2 weeks about 10 days in Wales, and then we'll fly from London to Bosnia, to Sarajevo, which is the
Mhm.
capital. And then we'll go. to southern Bosnia, where the town of Mostar is. It's about 110,000 people.
Mhm.
And we have taught there before, um, done, taught at a university before, a Muslim university there, um, and just had a wonderful time teaching English and teaching English literature and teaching English language usage as well, because that's obviously not the original language. But they start learning it in first grade. So by the time they get to university, they know it pretty well. And but they're also really curious. For the most part, they're curious. Some students are just feeling so hopeless with uh, the political makeup of the country after the war in the early 1990s. It's still, I mean, there's no shooting usually, but um, it's a very complex, uh, thanks to the U.S. Um, governmental structure, and um, so it's hard to get a job, for instance, unless you really know somebody because of the corruption. But a lot of the students are in there, um, are hopeful, and they want to learn more English, and whether it's for a career as a translator or a tour guide, um, or a teacher, they want to learn the language. They they're not used to writing papers on English language writers. Um, so that is sometimes a struggle. But yes, and I've taught I've taught all levels in Bosnia at one time or another. There's a school called the primary school of Mostar, and but it has students from first grade to eighth grade. Um, and I once did a workshop there, um, on film, um, film screen writing. How do you put a film screen or a uh, screenplay together? You know, um, and because I'd done poetry workshops with the same kids, and I wanted to do something different. And I decided on Harry Potter, or a version of Harry Potter, and I called the principal, and I asked I asked her, "Do the kids know Harry Potter in any way?" And she just laughed. She said, "They've seen all the movies, they've read all the books in English." So that answered my question. And I went in several days later, and I I showed the students, the format for writing a screenplay, and um, we were going to do it by pencil, but I showed them the format, and I gave them the first half a page, which would be the first half minute of a film. But a page is more or less equal to a minute in the final film. And so I set it up with four characters from Harry Potter. And then I divided the students up into three or maybe four, um, group people in different groups, and that they went into different rooms, and they just did a great job. And I said, try to come up with a three-page beginning. That'd be the first 3 minutes of your film. And I reminded them also that um, screenplay screenplays are usually a collaborative effort anyway. Um, and so they all work together really well. you know, I asked, challenge somebody's idea gently. And when the time was up, we had a bunch of 3-minute screenplays, and it was really fun.
Oh,
And
it sounds wonderful. That's great. And they learned a
yeah,
new skill. That's
they
great.
yes they did, and I'll probably go back and teach something at that school, and the the principal and who was actually married to the founder of the school. Um, they've become great friends, and in Bosnia we've developed a kind of family there,
Oh,
and
sure.
and it's wonderful. And I always like um, trying to test my knowledge of Bosnian in the work or in the marketplace,
Mhm.
and sometimes I really mess it up, and sometimes they'll understand anyway, like taxi drivers, uh, and sometimes I'll even hand them a note that somebody else wrote that says where I want to go, and the cab driver will answer back in English. Oh yeah, I know where that is.
Wonderful.
So
Well, Michael, it's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I just love to, I wish sometimes that we were in the same room together and we probably would be
yeah,
hours on it. It's so
exactly. Yeah, I
fascinating.
mean, as you can
You
tell, I don't talk to many people about all this, and I have,
I'm honored.
I have a few poetry friends here in Wichita, and we're 500,000 people, and
Wow.
um, so this is a great opportunity for me, and
I
I love.
appreciate you coming on here. And I would like to know if you'd like to take us out with a poem.
Sure,
Just pick
yeah,
one that you prefer.
I will do that. Um, okay, on page 2 actually is a poem
Okay.
called Red Wheat. Um, and here in Kansas, we have a large Mennonite uh, community.
Mhm.
And the Mennonites were the ones that brought the hard winter wheat to Kansas and to the Midwest from the Urals and the the mountainsides of Russia. And I've always liked the phrase red wheat.
Mhm.
Um, so that's kind of where that comes from. They I make reference to the meadowlark. That's a Kansas bird. Um, so I will read red wheat.
All right.
These are some of the things. Excuse me, red wheat. These are some of those things. Gradually, the system begins to break down with ransom and capture. Soon the snow, as we will see, never measures up to expectations. Here in South Central, the meadowlark sits on the remaining stone foundation, bringing her particular ballad to Vermont Street. And the wheat being in the ground, red winter can begin. It took 4 days after removing life support. Red winter has begun.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. Have a
Yes,
safe journey to Bosnia. Give my best to your wife and
thank you. I will do that.
have a
And
wonderful rest of your day.
thanks for being open to um, another poetry conversation.